about the West Side, but the West Side was a very thriving, loving, um, forward moving community in every way. I mean,
Welcome to Message Reveal. Message Reveal identifies a vibe, a message, or a story told through lyrics of a song. And yes, you guys, you know how I do. If you rock with me every week, you know I have a special guest for you, and I can wait to tell you about our special guest. But before we do so, I always tell you a few things. I only mean a few things about our special guest. So one, she is a native of Las Vegas, Nevada. Yes, born and raised. We big up our natives. You know how I feel about that. Number two, she is a graduate from Hampton University and Thurgood Marshall School of Law. Yes, and she can correct me if I'm wrong at the end. But last but not least, she is the first Black woman appointed to the Nevada justice system. You guys, please put your hands together and welcome my special guest, Judge Karen Bennett-Haron.
hi, thank you so much. Thank you.
How are you today, my dear?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. And first of all, let me tell you why I'm doing amazing, because you said yes to me.
Oh my goodness. Of course. Of course.
I just really appreciate that. So before we get started, let me just say this. I'm on my second season and I'm super happy about being on my second season. And with my
by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So being on my second season, I have a theme this season, and the theme is don't forget about the love.
Mm-hmm.
So many times we forget about the love, and in this current environment, everything is everything except for the love. So I think we need to bring that energy of that high vibration back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
So I say all of that. Do you know who Tank is? He's an R&B singer. He also has a podcast called R&B Money.
Okay, I do know who he is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, he made a statement which I thought was pretty profound. He said, our violence is not the threat. Our love is.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. So they would prefer us to continue to be in that space versus the high vibration of love. That's my perspective of it.
Absolutely. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. If we could ever get over our little petty differences that we have with each other and come together as a collective, because that's really our story. Our story is one of community and collaboration, and we are a tribal people. So if we ever can put down all those other learned behaviors that we've adopted from other communities, we would definitely be far more advanced.
Well, I agree with that. Definitely that.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I do, I ask all my guests this one particular question. How has love supported you throughout your life?
Oh my gosh. Um, I have received so much love over my lifetime. I don't think I would be even sitting here talking to you had I not been supported in the way that I've been supported, not only by my family and, of course, my parents and, my immediate family, but I have a huge extended family. And that includes the Las Vegas community. I have been just embraced and supported throughout my life here in Las Vegas, whether it be as a young child, whether it be as a high school student, a college student returning home, a law school student returning home, there was always somebody to give me a kind word of encouragement, of support. Um, and it really goes a long way. When you know that the expectation is for you to succeed and to excel, um, you put forth your best effort, and I've been immensely blessed. I mean, no, without question, love has been a very dominant theme in my life.
I love that. I love also that you spoke about the expectation of
Mm-hmm.
love.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Mm-hmm.
we giving that now in our current environment to not just our babies, because we talk about our babies, are we
Mm-hmm.
giving it to ourselves? Are we giving it to our community? What do you think about that expectation of love?
I don't see it as often as I'd like to, if I'm being very honest. You know, I was thinking about this the other day because so much of what happened in our community during my childhood was based upon kind of like an organic movement of people who wanted to work together to achieve a common goal and to lift each other. And nobody was really looking for a come up, and now there seems to be more emphasis, and I guess it's a social media phenomenon, but it's all about, I need to get my credit, I need to get my photo op, I need people to know what I'm doing. I was always taught that, you doing right really counts when nobody else is watching. You know what I'm saying? And so now there seems to be more attention based on, who's doing what and who's getting the credit for it. And as a consequence of that, we've become competitors instead of collaborators.
Ooh, wait, wait,
So,
wait, wait. That's a pause moment. I have pause moments.
okay,
I love that you said they have become a what?
we've become more competitors than collaborators.
Mm,
So, it's very difficult for you to extend support to somebody that you're competing with.
mm.
And we have lost sight of our common goal and mission because we all need to get to the same place at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Maybe in different ways, but we as a community need to be about the uplifting of the community, not about the uplifting of self. So it kind of, I read an article years ago and I guess it stayed with me. There was this um, analysis done of what they're calling the prosperity gospel in church,
Mm,
and how that kind of took over from the more community driven or the liberation theology that we hear from people we say we admire, like Dr. King and others in his time period, Otis Moss, whoever. So that prosperity gospel promotes individualism as opposed to what liberation theology talks about in terms of community uplift. So all of our emphasis from our own spiritual beings has now shifted in many ways, and one of the consequences of that is that we are now competing with each other for attention from outside sources,
mhm.
and so whenever you go outside before you build up inside,
Say that.
there's a void, and everybody suffers, so I do see, I will say this, I'm very pleased in there are pockets of our community where people are really attempting to make a difference collectively, and a lot of the young people are really getting engaged as a result of that. So there's always hope. Um, but coming from the time period that I grew up in, I can't help but be a little, nostalgic about the way our community was versus how it is now. And I'm not talking about in the physical sense. I'm talking about in the both the spiritual and the collective sense in terms of the people and the community that that existed here, because people don't like to think about, they talk negatively about the West Side, but the West Side was a very thriving, loving, um, forward moving community in every way. I mean, whether it was in banking, whether it was in church, whether it was in business ownership, property ownership, um, it's definitely something that, people were definitely striving at that time. And it's been, a lot of that has been abandoned so that you can go and live amongst and be accepted by other communities outside of what was at that time the Black community. So, it's bittersweet. It really is. It's bittersweet, but hopefully we can get back to that, because I think everything comes full circle. There's nothing new under the sun, and I think we have to unfortunately bump our heads up against some pretty hard walls before we realize that, our instinctive ways of being are okay. Like, you
Yes.
don't have to accept other people's definitions of who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we get back to the love.
I do believe we are. I'm going to piggyback of what you said or mentioned before about pockets. I do
Mhm.
believe the pockets are, but think about if it's so long that we did things out of order, it will take some time to get back into order. And I believe that we have a lot of great people. You have to also consider, I'm a native just like you. We have a lot of people coming in from other places
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
bring in that looks like you and I.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
bring in some things that may not necessarily work for Las Vegas. We are very unique. I tell people when I go anywhere, whether it's in the country or out of the country, we are uniquely our own. The
Mhm.
historic West Side, to have a gaming aspect of the historic West Side Las Vegas in
Mhm.
the 50s, the 60s. Where else in America where that was available?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, we
So,
really we really were. And the other interesting thing about us is, when you think we are 8%, less than 8% of the overall state population, but we had significant representation in all industries. You know what I mean? And even in education, we had an African American superintendent. You,
yes,
you know what I mean? So, it is, that kind of success only comes from the connectivity of the community. We did have, nightclub owners and gaming entrepreneurs who were Black and who were rooted in the community and who had alliances with pastors and the credit union owners, and
yes,
what I mean, and teachers. And our doctors that were here were small in number, but were mighty in terms of their presence. You had Dr. West, who also facilitated and owned the Voice newspaper. You know what I mean? So nobody stayed in a box. Everybody kind of contributed to the community in a way that, it should be. You had Charles Keller, who was denied the right to practice law for 5 years after passing the bar, but continued to work with the NAACP and initiate all of the civil rights lawsuits that were initiated during that time period. Continued to give of himself, even though he himself had been denied. So you had that, and I'm not,
perseverance.
it wasn't perfect, and I'm sure, and I know there were disagreements between these folks, but they came together for the higher good, and they always understood the assignment. And
Yes.
their individual wants didn't get in the way. And I'm hoping that we can get back to that. But that only comes from knowing who you are and what you are and whose you are, and not necessarily needing the validation of outside sources.
I do agree. I will also say this that we have to collectively be okay with multiple different sects,
Mm-hmm.
meaning we may have the spiritual community, but we may have the art community, we may have the gaming community, or we may have whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
We are not a monolithic group of people,
Right.
and
Right.
because of that, we will all give things in different way. I have a saying I say all the time: 7 is my favorite number, and I say there's 7 lanes in the road. Go where you are loved. Go
Exactly.
where your talent will
Mhm.
support you and make you grow and elevate you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's just important, even though, I always say there's no traffic when you're in your lane. You know what I mean?
Ooh, oh,
Absolutely no traffic when you're in your own lane, but it's important for you to know what the other lanes are doing. You know what I mean? So the you have the obligation, I think, for yourself to look at the other lane, understand the other lane, kind of never just get boxed in and be in your own silo, but understand it and not try to interfere with it, but try to find ways you can support it from your lane. So you just have to, I mean, it's all about how can I support somebody else, not necessarily how can I do it better than them, but how can I support somebody else, because that's what builds community,
yes.
you know.
And not only community, it builds character. And really, I have a saying that when you're tasked with fixing a plate for someone,
Mm-hmm.
and you know they don't like chicken, but they like fish. They don't
Mm-hmm.
like rice, but they like potatoes. And you go in and you fix this plate and you put everything on that plate they don't like and you
Mm-hmm.
give it to them. In the spiritual sense, you're fixing a plate for yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
now you are taking away from yourself. So anytime you do give with the heart that you're giving to yourself, and it will come back 10 times fold. And I think that's the missing element in our community, where they're clawing and they're saying things, not everybody, because I don't want to put that light, but we do have those ones, as of every other community, that are giving with the, I'm trying to look for the right word. They're giving not with love, they're giving with the aspect that you can just only do for me, and it needs to be well rounded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. I think part of that, though, also comes from not understanding your value.
Mm,
So, a lot of times when you find people that are that self centered, like you're describing, it's because in their mind, they don't value all the love and support that was poured into them to become who they are, because they're comparing themselves to something else, usually something outside of our community, and they want to be accepted and permitted access to, for whatever reason, whether it's money, jobs, position, whatever it is, they place value on, but they don't place value on themselves.
yes.
And that's really, and so they look for that in all external ways. And so you have to, I think that was some of the things, those were some of the things that, of course, I didn't recognize or realize. Go lay down. I did not recognize as a child, but now that I'm way past being a child and I can look back over that, I've come to appreciate the fact that these people who, I guess, in the world's estimation, may not have been that significant, whether they were domestic workers or preachers or doctors or teachers or stay at home people, whatever they may have been, they may not have been significant, in terms of the bright lights, but they understood their worth. They knew
Yes.
so much bigger than all of that. And I
Yes.
don't know if we really understand and are grounded in that value. You know what I mean? And that's really what we got to get back to, because that's where you learn love. That's really where you learn giving. That's where your cup is running over and you can afford to let it spill out and pour into other people. But when
Yes.
your cup is empty and you don't think you have value and you're always looking for it in all these external places, you don't have anything to give.
Yeah. You're
You
right.
just got to take. You just got to keep trying to take and fill yours up a little bit at a time, but it's not lasting, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
I think that's definitely a great point. I like what you said about that. And hopefully, what you said will resonate with someone today, tomorrow, or a year from now that they
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, okay, I have to think about that. Maybe my actions are selfish. Maybe I need to look at it from a higher vibration, from a love vibration. And when you look at it like that, you're never without. You're never without.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
So that's just my perspective. So let's get into this car and just go backwards just a little.
Okay.
And let's talk about one of the things I mentioned about you when I introduced you.
Okay.
I talked about you going to or being a graduate of Hampton and the
Mm-hmm.
Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that time frame and how you felt, and did you know that would be the process going to those particular schools? Were they sought out? Did you choose it, or did they choose you?
Well, okay, so I tell everybody this. My dad was it was a graduate of Morris Brown College in Atlanta, and my mother was a graduate of Payne College in Augusta, Georgia. So they both are HBCU graduates or were HBCU graduates. And my dad, when I was in high school, told me, he's like, you're the only place you're going is a black college. I don't care which one you go to, but you're gonna go to a black college. That's where my money's going. That's what he would always. And so I kind of grew up understanding that I had to pick from the black colleges that were available. Um, I had the I had the benefit of having spent a lot of time in South Carolina and Georgia. My dad is from South Carolina and my mother is from Georgia. So my summers were spent with my grandparents in both states. So I had been exposed to a lot of the black colleges both in South Carolina and in Georgia. And I had relatives that were working like at Spelman and Morehouse and all that kind of stuff. So I knew as this is me. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm related to anybody. You know what I mean?
You were smart back then.
Right. I'm like, I want. So I had an uncle. One of my dad's younger brothers graduated from Hampton. And I thought he is just the coolest. He's just the coolest. And he always talked about Hampton. Always, always. So I'm like, okay, Virginia. I have no relatives there. I have no. So that's kind of how that came about. The same thing happened kind of with regard to law school. I was at Hampton. Most of the people who graduated from Hampton, if they were going to go to law school, they would go to Howard's Law School.
Okay.
And so my thinking initially was, okay, I'll go to Howard, but I was really concerned because I love to like college was my best life. Okay, my absolute best life. I had more fun in college than ever. And I knew if I was going to go to law school, I couldn't continue that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I had to be a little bit more serious. So going to law school with a bunch of friends, I'm like, I don't know about that. But I did want to go to a black law school. So the only other one available was Thurgood Marshall. So it kind of won by default, quite frankly. Yeah, but I'm so glad because it was a completely different experience because I went from East Coast, kind of an East Coast orientation, which was fabulous, to now Texas, which is really its own. It's
World.
like the United States of Texas when you get down there. I mean, it was a complete culture shock for me, but one that I really appreciated down the road. Learned a lot, great professors, really, really good experience, but in a different kind of setting because Houston is still cowboys and rodeos and, black cowboys, all the things that I had never been exposed to.
Mm.
So it was an awakening for me, but I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed both experiences immensely, and I'm so grateful. That my dad. I always used to tell him, that's like one of the best. I thought he was being so mean, you know, that I had to go to a black college, not understanding that it was really for my good. Because growing up in Las Vegas at the time, I went to Western High School and at the time of my attendance, you have to take a test, a placement test, where they would give you scoring based on your test results in terms of what classes you could take. So it's phase one, phase two, phase three, and phase four. So phase four was college prep level. Phase one was, learning disabled kind of things. Most of my classes, with the exception of my math classes, were all what they call phase four classes. So
Wow.
it was usually just me and Johnny Bailey, Bob Bailey's son, who would be in these classes as Black folks, and so we were indoctrinated in a very white oriented education system. And it was important to my dad that I get exposed to a more Black centered education system that gave you the tools you needed to learn how to value yourself and your culture and all of that. That was really important to him. And I get it now because that is really how I live my life. You know what I mean? My life is really centered on understanding my worth and my the worth of my culture and my family, and it's
Yes.
really gotten me through a lot of dark times. So I'm eternally grateful that he had vision, to do that for me. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
And
we
my
thank.
brother also. My brother had the same rule, same.
Well, I would hope so. What's good for
Right.
the gander is good for the
Right.
goose. But I
Exactly.
think that's great. One thing I do have here on my podcast, and I said repeatedly, we know your father has passed away. And
Hmm.
anytime someone has passed away, I believe one, a physical death, but two, a spiritual death if we don't say their name. So if you can please say your dad's name,
My
full
dad's name
name.
is Marion Daniel Bennett Sr. Yes.
We honor him and we are thankful for the seed that he placed in you that allows you to express who you are today, because that seed will also feed some other child that says, especially you were wise enough. You was a wise child that said, wait a minute, I don't want to go to school where none of my that was wisdom, okay? So you can cut up and
Right.
nobody be on your butt.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
And
Hmm.
then as you transition, as you say, then you say, wait a minute, I had so much fun on partying. I need to go somewhere where I can be focused.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it sounds like you were always wise in analyzing what you need to do for yourself long term.
Well, you know what? And that's where that expectation that I talked about, I knew that failure was not an option for me. You know what I mean? I couldn't come back home, not having done what I was sent to do.
Absolutely.
I knew that was not an option. So that was always at the forefront. I never wanted to disappoint my father, my community. I just didn't think I could have dealt with that. So I wanted to do all the things that I thought I was supposed to do, you
That's
know.
good.
Yeah.
I also call that foundation. Like
Mhm.
it was just certain things, like for example, it was certain things that my mother just expected of us girls. And we knew it. Whether we wanted to cut up or not, it was still a certain standard. And I think that's what we need to have today, a standard. And you
Right.
can go from there. Right
Right.
now, it's just the bottom and you
Right.
can top
Right.
out. So
Right.
I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Right. No, it's really important to kind of set that expectation in our kids and just in each other, just how everybody talks about the golden rule, but the reality is it's really a guide. You treat people like you want them to treat you. I don't want to be let down, so I don't want to let you down. There will be times, we're all human, that we're going to be let down, but I think the intention is what determines the outcome. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
So I just think it's, if we could just be more mindful of how we regard each other, we will really, I think, uplift ourselves in so many ways. In so many ways. Yeah.
Well, I say this. Everything starts with what you do and how you see it. If one person is over there cutting up, you know not to do that. So by
Hmm.
you coming on having this conversation, by me continuing on my platform, this is the catalyst for people to see and parts of it will continue to grow. That's the
Hmm.
way I see it.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And I think these tools like podcasts and social media, I mean, they're excellent tools, especially you can reach so many more people than you can just one on one and word of mouth. And it's really important for us to understand and to utilize those tools in that way, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely agree. Well, music has turned me all the way out. I mean, all the
Okay.
way out
Okay.
in a great way. And
Okay.
I say this because we're going to get into a little bit of music.
Okay.
So I always ask my guests to provide a lyric of a song that has either blessed them, distracted them, or given them perspective. But,
Okay.
but, before you answer, there's some rules.
Okay.
If you can sing, I need you to sing your throw box out. If you can rap, as they say in the streets, I need you to come hard in the paint.
Okay.
But if you cannot do either one,
Mm-hmm.
I need you to say it boldly. In the streets, they say stand 10 toes down. I need you to give it passion. I need everybody to feel the essence of what you're talking about. So we'll go back to my original question.
Okay.
I need you to provide lyrics of a song that has either blessed you, distracted you, or provided perspective. One of the three. Which ones would you like to share?
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think. I mean, I know there are several. I know there are several songs that kind of made me think and um, focus and I'm
Giving you perspective?
giving me perspective. I think growing up, my household was a big Aretha Franklin, um, Temptations, Supremes kind of household. I was born in the 60s, so that was always kind of flooded through. Stevie Wonder, all of that. Marvin Gaye. And I think if I were to say one in particular that just has guided me, probably would be Aretha's Respect, RESPECT. Find
Yeah.
out what you think to me. Yeah. I think that kind of has been, it transitioned from childhood to adulthood. It's kind of stayed with me. I'm still a huge Aretha fan. I sat and watched all 13 hours of her funeral.
Oh, you a fan.
Right, I'm a fan. And yeah, so I think that probably Stevie Wonder's Sign Still Delivered. I think, and of course Marvin Gaye is What's Going On later, in terms of just a worldview. Um Father, I just, yeah, I can't and I love, to this day, I'm a huge fan of Donny Hathaway, when he sings about the ghetto. And I just, yeah, that tells the stories of us, Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn. I grew up around that, and that kind of music has always been my God. That and gospel, of course. You
Mm.
know, my theme song is Yolanda Adams' "Battle Is Not Yours," but the Lord. That's definitely carried me through a whole lot.
Well, okay. Can I just jump in?
Okay.
The battle is not yours. Can you give me a few lyrics of Yolanda's song, The Battle Is Not Yours?
No matter what you're going through. Let me think. I'm terrible with lyrics. I have to hear the song. But but the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. That's the whole thing. Let me look and see here. But I don't know all the words without without hearing her start singing.
Yeah, music does trigger
Mhm,
us and get us to,
mhm,
to tap into
mhm.
that other side of our brain.
Right, that's right. There's no pain Jesus can't heal. there's no hurt he cannot heal. Mm-hmm. Yep. There is no pain Jesus cannot feel, and there's no hurt he cannot heal. And I truly believe that.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. That is definitely beautiful. So, we talked about you going to school.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I also mentioned at the beginning, you being a native of Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to say you have a different perspective. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason being, you originally grew up on J Street, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And then you transitioned to Bonanza Village.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you give us some of that contrast from J Street to Bonanza Village, and what was the difference that you from a childhood can view and see, and now as an adult you like, okay, I get it.
So my birthplace is 1648 North J. I go by there all the time. It's right down the street from Doolittle, and I lived there until I was in the first grade. And my parents built a home over in Bonanza Village, which at the time was predominantly white community. And there was, unbeknownst to me at the time, I guess there was kind of a lot going on over there in terms of them not necessarily. There were even what they call covenants and restrictions that said Black folks couldn't live over there. There were others that said it could be, you could have horses and chickens and all that other stuff too. But there was a covenant that said, no blacks. But Charles Keller, the lawyer that I talked about before, he bought a home over there, and encouraged my dad to do the same, to build a home. So my dad was the pastor of Zion United Methodist Church, which at that time was Zion Methodist Church. And in the Methodist Church, the church provides for the pastor's living situation. They usually buy a home. It's called a parsonage, and it's owned by the church and all those kinds of things. And so the church agreed to buy the land, and then my parents decided they wanted to, to go forward and build the house. And that was, I guess, kind of a challenge at the time because of, that was really, we were probably there was us, the Baileys, Bob and Anna Bailey and their family, the McDaniels, Lunell and Lamar McDaniel, and then Reverend Wyatt and his wife
Mm,
were the families that, kind of transitioned our way to Bonanza Village initially, and it was different. And what's really interesting though, I was still able. My dad would take me back to the old neighborhood to play with my friends on the weekend
oh,
stuff because right because it wasn't the neighborhood. The neighborhood wasn't the neighborhood. You know what I mean?
yes.
So yeah. So I still had portions of my old stomping ground, even after we had relocated in the area. But at the time, I didn't understand why we had to move.
Oh,
I really didn't. And I think that's just being a kid, and you want to be around all the things that give you comfort and that you've grown accustomed to, Um, so, as a consequence of moving to Bonanza Village, I ended up having to go to what was at that time Bonanza Elementary School. It's now known as Mabel Hogard Elementary School.
yes.
So I was in walking distance of that. So that's the school I had to go to. And again, a predominantly white experience initially, which was challenging.
I
But
bet.
but I had very engaged parents, who were very insistent upon me getting the education that they thought I deserved. And so there was a lot of back and forth, because and as a kid, you don't know what you're dealing with. You just know, something ain't right, but you don't necessarily understand it all. But I think because I wasn't shielded entirely from the discussions, I grew to understand that it really had very little to do with my ability and everything to do with my skin color. That was,
Mhm.
we were facing these challenges. And so, um, you start to learn how to discount some of the negative things that you're hearing. You know, you learn early how to do that, because these people are biased based on something that's just, you know, that's their problem basically, you know. And that's kind of how I was trained. That was the lesson in my household all the time, you know. They don't like me, daddy. What? So
Which that's a buffer. Like that's preparing you for life because we won't just say the black and white thing. You
Mhm.
will go in spaces where people have no idea about you and they just don't like you just because. So part of that is growing up,
Right,
learning the course of conflict resolution. Like, don't give into it. Go about your
right,
business.
right, exactly. And it's not an excuse for failure. So you still are expected to do well in school. I don't care if they don't like you. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
is not an excuse for failure. I'm going to make sure you have all the tools. These were my parents both, and you know, they both, I'm going to make sure you're reading beyond grade level. I'm going to make sure you're, you know, if you need a math tutor, you're going to have a math tutor, if you know, whatever, but you have to perform in school.
Yeah.
And so that I learned that lesson very early. I think a lot of it was accelerated by the fact that we were kind of plunked down into this, you know, kind of hostile white environment for a while. And so, you know, you learn, you know, kids have to adapt, you know, and you can't, and that's the other thing. I think I was treated as a kid, but the level, my dad always, you know, we'd have these conversations where, you know, this is what's going on. Yes, you're right, but this is what you have to do. Like responsibility was a really big deal in my household. And I think it was, like I said, really pronounced because we were in the midst of dealing with, you know, they don't want us to live here. They don't want me to go to this school. They don't want me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was very vigilant about showing me that that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
You
And I think that's a part of growth to say, yes, we will deal with these barriers, but you
know.
have to learn how to navigate these waters of life. And
Mhm.
when you learn or have that foundation, it would build in every situation in life you come across.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I say all that to say, with you being a judge, like
Mhm.
I was always so proud. I always admired you from afar. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful and she's a judge and she looks like me. Like it was always a thing because you were appointed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It was 2002,
Mhm. Yes. Mhm.
and you did what, roughly 20 years or so.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That is amazing. The mere fact that you did it, and not only that, yeah, you were appointed, but you were a native of Las Vegas. So
Mhm.
I give you your flowers and I
Oh,
bow
thank
to you.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you. But it was a pleasure. You know what? I have to tell you, it was probably it was the most challenging transition of my life to go into. I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. I really did. I mean, the culture in that institution in particular is the layers in terms of the way that culture operates is just, it is eye opening. It is definitely eye opening. I mean, there are people who are working in social justice spaces who are critical of um, courts and systems, especially when it comes to Black and brown folks, and the criticism is well deserved. But when you get kind of, as we say, in the back hallways of you recognize just how many deficits actually exist throughout that system. Um, and the lack of attention to cultural competency, to professional diversity. Like at the time that I was appointed, even in 2002, the overwhelming majority of judges had been prosecutors, period.
Wow.
So what that does though, but then you're a judge and you're expected to hear all kinds of cases, not just criminal cases, but civil cases, you know, um, temporary protective order cases, all these things. And these people had this narrow slant of professional experience, and that was being lauded as something that to aspire to, when quite frankly you need a judge that's kind of touched a little bit of everything, that understands, so that you kind of have a more well-rounded approach to the law. You know what I mean? Because the law is not to be in a vacuum either.
Yes.
So so it was just very interesting to me to see um the lack of exposure a lot of these people had, not only to other cultures but to other just other aspects of our community and our society. It really changes your perspective, because I went in thinking you're doing something and you know better, but I
Hmm.
found out a lot of these people don't know, like this is all they know. They don't know any better. And I know that sounds kind of, because you're thinking, oh, these people are judges and administrators and, county commissioners and whatever. But their experience, their exposure is very, very limited. And they're afraid of, a lot of them are afraid of stepping out of that comfort zone.
Wow.
Yeah. So it impacts a lot. It impacts funding, it impacts decisions that are made on a case by case basis. It impacts on the efficiency of the system, I mean, little things. I mean, some people are not even well versed in areas like just customer service, just general traditional
Wow.
service. So it's not necessarily insisted upon in public spaces. I find that, I'm like, you not only will you help the general public, but you can actually save money by being efficient and courteous and all the things, so it was really, really interesting to see um up close a community of people who I kind of thought maybe had more going on than really they had going on. Like it really wasn't all that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it was a rewarding experience from the standpoint that you get to bring something different to the table, and you get to kind of carve out your own um, way of being, and hopefully deliver that to the community, on a regular basis. At least that's what I hope I did. And yeah, it's amazing. It People would definitely be amazed to see it up close. It is not what you think.
I
It is
believe
not.
that. I believe that. It's almost in my head. And it's like things that make you go, hmm.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
let me, if I may say this, I have a person that I am really good friends with. I call her my sister.
mhm,
She ended up years ago. Now she told me this story that
mhm,
she got into a domestic issue.
mhm, mhm.
And she said that you were so fair and so supportive in ruling in that she may not be in her current position she's in now if it was not for you.
Oh wow, I really appreciate that. But you know what? I think, and I hope that that was everybody's experience in front of me. I know people don't always agree with decisions that you make, but to just be heard, and that goes back to that whole thing about customer service. I'm there to listen. You know what I mean? That's my role, and I cannot tell you how many, like we have, okay, so in justice court we have two clerks. Every judge is assigned two clerks, what they call your court clerk and then your backup clerk, and they're the ones that have to, whatever decisions you do, whatever paperwork you sign, whatever is processed through those clerks, right? So when I first so when I first got appointed, I had the two clerks that were assigned to me, and I replaced the judge who left and went to another court. So I had her two clerks basically, that were assigned to me. And so what I noticed is, like, they made a lot of mistakes, a lot of clerical mistakes when they would type up the information. And then they didn't want to give out information to the people who were coming before me. So for example, if I said, okay, I'm going to give you 30 days, and in 30 days, I want you to do, A, B, and C, I want that written down for them so that they understand what they're expected to do. Because coming to court is like a major deal. You're not necessarily getting all the I's and the T's, you know what I mean? So, and they were so frustrated with me because they did not want to have to communicate with the public.
That's
And they
not how it works.
exactly, but they filed complaints because other judges had not asked them to do that kind of stuff. Seriously. Yeah, it was just a
So
whole
what you did, you set a standard and you were calling them on their carpet. That's are
exactly,
some basic
exactly,
needs that, hey,
exactly.
what I said needs to be translated and put on a piece of paper.
I want this to be done. I want to give out this kind of information. If I'm telling you to go to a class someplace, I need this information provided to you, where to go, who to contact, and if you have a problem, who to contact with that. So all of that kind of thing, they really resisted. Now, the good news on that is I was able, as a consequence, they kept having all, they hated working for me. I was just the worst judge. I was all the things. So county HR let me hold a recruitment for my clerk and my backup clerk. Well, so my clerk at the time became the first Black clerk to work in justice court.
Wait a minute, wait a
Black
minute, wait a
court,
minute, wait a minute.
court. Yes, yes,
This
yes,
is what I'm talking about when we go
yes,
back to the foundation having
yes.
standards. You're not just going to do because somebody else allowed them to do it. If you
Exactly,
had not did that, look at the
exactly,
opportunity that you brought upon you.
exactly. And now we have several Black clerks, but that was just one of the things. And then she came in from another court. She actually came from over from family court. And I was really happy about that because she was used to dealing in high volume, but still understood the need to be customer service oriented. So just imparting that kind of thing and just the reluctance that these people experience, they didn't want to, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, why do I have to talk to them? Why do I have to answer, right? Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Again, that's mind blowing.
Right. But it comes from limited exposure. You look at everybody who comes to court as your enemy. You're That's your orientation. I don't know where that comes from because that's never been my experience, but that was their experience in many ways. Why do I have to answer their questions? Why do I have to give them this information? I should just have to process this paperwork accordingly. The other thing, I'll give you another example about what I'm talking about. I had a friend of mine who applied for a job in at the school district to be a counselor. She got all the way through whatever you do to become a high school counselor, and they offered the job, and it's contingent upon you passing the background check. So she had had an arrest for shoplifting or something back when she was 18. Now we're fast forwarding, she's way past that. The case had been dismissed because what
Ah.
it really wasn't a case or whatever. But the dismissal had never been recorded. So it still appeared as an open case on record. Now, so we were able to work with our records management manager, who at the time, she's passed now. Her name's Anna Vasquez. She was phenomenal, and she looked it up, went back several years to find all the connect the dots, facilitated the dismissal so that my friend could go on and get. But what that did, so I said, well, Anna, I have a question. If this is happening to my friend, how many other people is this, and why weren't those cases? So we went back. I had them to go back. Well, that was a big, oh no, we don't. I'm like, no, I think you need to do an audit of these open files in these cases over a period of time to see, because you're impacting people's ability to get work. And everyone
Yes.
doesn't know me or know somebody down here to go and do all the things that need to be done to make that happen. So, I mean, there was a whole lot of reluctance, but the reality is we live in a city where work cards are issued, background checks are all the things to work in the gaming industry, all these things. You cannot have this stuff outstanding on your record, particularly if the case was dismissed. There should be,
That it
but
should be
there
a
was
no-brainer.
absolutely, but there was a reluctance because it's kind of like, well, we've never done it before. So why do we have to do it again? Now, is that because they're racist or is that because they just don't know any better? I don't know. Either way, it impacts so many people negatively. And so just that customer service component um was just so every time, so because I kept seeing those kinds of situations over and over again, I really tried for my courtroom to be kind of that different space. I say good morning, I speak to you by using your whole name. I don't call you by your first name. I try to listen to what you're telling me, because just because the police say something happened doesn't mean it happened, and just because you say something happened doesn't mean it happened. So we have to kind of ferret it all out. So all of those things, but those are not legal principles. Those are just how you want to be treated, just kind of. And I used to tell my clerks and I tell people that worked with me down the court, if you were to say, if I came to court, how would I want somebody to treat me? And then just do that, it would, everything would be so much better, but it was a fight every time. Now I think things have adjusted to be a little bit more flexible. Judges are more accountable now. I think not so far removed from the community. They are um, at least trying to understand these other components because the community demands more now. And I'd like to think that in some small way I contributed to that, because
Absolutely.
I always tried to remain rooted in the community, even though, you know what I mean. It was important for me to remain rooted, and I hope that that's something that, and I know with the young judges that have come behind me, Belinda Harris and Jasmine, all the young women, Dee Butler, I think they're doing the same thing, if not better. So I'm really proud of them. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely proud of the fact that you chose to have standards, and with your standards have brought about some change. And that is the catalyst that we want to set. Like, yes, we can get into spaces and places
Mhm.
that it may not be, but if we're
Mhm.
there, how can we
Mhm.
navigate? How can we
Mhm.
say, how can I make a difference and set those standards? Because if you have not did what you have done, the
Mhm.
stories that you told, would those
Mhm.
ladies have an example?
Mhm.
They could
Mhm.
have went on with the norm. Not saying it
Mhm.
would have been either way, but you set those standards. Customer
Mhm.
service to me is the basic thing.
Of everything, of
Period.
everything, and we're getting paid to be down there to serve. That's the whole nature of our salary. That's why if you don't come to court, we have no jobs. You know what I mean?
But
So.
you look at it that way, but other people don't. I work for local
Mhm.
government and we're considered a public servant.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
with that being said, it is times I've sat with someone to go over some things and they came back and was like, thank you. I didn't have that experience before. And I said, again, going back to what you're saying, I would want somebody to do that same for me
Right.
or my mother or my sister. So I look
Right.
at you in that lens
Right.
and I
Mhm.
want to support you. And you are absolutely right. Everybody does not have that mindset.
Mhm.
It's foundation, what your perspective is of community, and
Mhm.
what you want to see as far as growth or elevation.
Mhm. And then, I think there are those people who are in public service across the board. I don't care if you're talking about at the water company or the whatever, the Nevada Energy, wherever, where they don't always understand that everybody is human. Everybody has a need, and they've been allowed in some sectors to discount certain people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not, and I hear this all the time. Well, they're so rude and they're so, but usually when they come to you, they're in that, that last stage of, panic about
Yes.
situation is. So that's part of being a professional, right? You have to learn to gauge that this person is really having some issues right now. And this is not personal to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
they're frustrated with the situation, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah.
I agree with you, and that's when the assessment piece come into play. I remember a particular, I won't go into too much detail, but a lady needed some particular services, and I kind of gave her the parameter of what the
Mhm.
services was available. She didn't like what I said, and she
Right,
said, I come from LA, and this
right,
is blah, 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 blah,
right,
blah. And I
right.
said, ma'am, I do understand, but in LA, they
Mm-hmm.
don't have no state taxes, and we operate just a little bit different,
Different.
right? So when it was all said and done, she was she talked to me so bad, you would
Mm-hmm.
think I was not a child of God, but I took it for what it was, and I was very calm to her, and I said, well, if you do choose to exercise um the particular thing that she was pursuing, I said, I have to, get off the phone now and move on.
Mm-hmm.
I say all that to say I put notes in the system. 2 months later, she called back
Mm-hmm.
and she asked to speak with me. Not only did she apologize, she said that she wasn't in the right frame of mind. And number two, she was ready to take on the services and she knew what the parameters were.
Mm-hmm.
I said to her, I said, let this be a lesson between you and I.
Mm-hmm.
What goes on in LA or anywhere else, when you gonna get
Right.
ate up here. I said, you happen to have me, and I had a heart and understood that you just didn't understand that what you get somewhere else does not apply here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I say that for two reasons. Did you find that you would run into people that actually had access in LA or other places and they come and say, well, it should be here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did
Oh
you
yeah.
deal with that?
So you hear that a lot, and I know I used to tell, especially with youngsters that were coming over here and they wanted to hang out on the strip and they wanted to do whatever they wanted to do out there. Okay, which you and I both know as natives. I mean, I don't think I had ever heard of any criminal activity on the strip, particularly any civilians running around with guns or doing anything out there that weren't immediately handled
Addressed.
in a whole nother kind of way. You know
I
what I
know
mean?
what you're saying.
And so when I went, so these youngsters, they come over and they want to party and they want to, shoot up the club or do whatever they want to do in the club, or have these riffs and all this stuff, and they didn't understand the heightened police presence that they encountered. Because in Los Angeles, if I've got beef at a club, the bouncer may ask me to leave, but I get to go home. Here, that's not happening.
Because they're not going to allow you to repeat and mess up their money.
Exactly. By no stretch of the imagination. So when they would come to court, I don't understand why I've been in jail for 2 days, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why. Like, okay, welcome to Las Vegas. You know what I mean? I say that routine, welcome to Las Vegas. This is not Los Angeles. This is not New York, New Orleans. It's none of those. It's Las Vegas, where anything done, especially in that geographic area of Las Vegas, is going to be scrutinized to the hilt. You may not even be able to pass a pencil across without somebody looking at you. So yeah, I encountered that a lot. The other thing is, we um for a long time, I will say this, I also encountered criticism regarding what we call pretrial detention, where somebody was arrested and they may not be seen by a judge for an extremely a long period of time.
What would be a long period of time?
So initially it was 8 days. Like, they could keep you for 8 days and you hadn't seen anything. They had a case that came down and said, there's an 8-day kick out rule, where they'd kick you out of the jail after 8 days. Well, of course, that was litigated in federal court and found to be violation of due process. And so
Wow.
then they came up with this this protocol where the judges would review the cases on paper within 48 hours of the arrest and make decisions based upon what was on paper about the person's bail status. They had a standard bail schedule, and usually the bail schedule was based upon dollar amounts, and so a lot of people who didn't have access to money or bail bondsmen would still remain in custody, could remain in custody for 4 or 5 days before actually seeing a judge.
Mm,
So we worked really. Now that criticism, I think, was well, we weren't doing
absolutely.
what other, yeah, we were not doing what other jurisdictions were doing. I remember I had visited. I have an uncle in Atlanta who at the time was a judge, and they had 24-hour arraignment court. And
Wow.
so, right, so I'm like, how's that happening? And here we are, 24-hour town, and we're not, we're it's taking us 4 days to see somebody. Somebody may end up losing their job. There, all kinds of things. So we worked really, really hard to set up a more efficient, again, customer service driven protocol where now, you're seeing really within 24 hours of your arrest. We have an initial arraignment court, and that was driven in large part by a lot of the criticisms that we were getting from people who came here from other. Because remember, we've got all these tourists coming in here,
Yes.
you know, and so, yeah, and they're like, well, wait a minute, it was a DUI, but I mean, that's kind of what y'all, that's what y'all do.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was driven in response to the criticism, and I think it was a valid criticism. It was one, and it also changed the way bail is considered. So now it's not just about money. In fact, you can be released on conditions, you can be released on your own recognizance, looking at the total person and getting an actual hearing in front of a judge within a fairly quick period of time. So that's something else that was driven in large part by folks from out of town saying this is what's going on.
But that
But
change was needed and
it was
warrant.
needed. It was needed. It was warranted, and it was something that we should have paid attention to long before we paid attention to it. To be honest,
Yeah.
yeah. But it is, and it's one that really should have been in lockstep with the rest of the nation in terms of bail reform and all the things that have been discussed about bail reform. So yeah, but there are people who come from other communities and expect, and I think sometimes I wonder, because if things were that great in these other communities, I wonder why are they here? You
Well,
know?
and that's the point. That's the point. Yeah.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
say that all the time, but I think it's just an excuse
We
because you
don't do
are
this.
where you are.
Y'all don't have this. We don't do this. We in blah blah blah. We don't do this. We would never have this. Would never happen in Detroit. This would never happen in LA. But the reality is, if it was really all that great, I think you would still be there.
That is absolutely correct. That is true. Now, again, we're always open for balanced conversation, but
Hmm.
just to come in and dump and just talk about Las Vegas and say, you guys are not, no, 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 no. We're just not going to do that. Plus, again, being a native, Vegas is layers. You have one layer, two layers, three layers. And part of it, you have the old school Las Vegas, you have the new school Las Vegas, and you have the strip that's just stretching for the future. And
Hmm.
all of that has layers within layers from my perspective.
Right, right. I agree. And I think it takes a while before you really get acquainted with those layers. And I think, as in any person coming to a new situation, you really need to give yourself a chance to kind of marinate and get and see and learn what you need. You know what I mean? Because that's true of any community. If I were to move right now, I couldn't go to San Francisco or Los Angeles or Miami or whatever, and automatically assume I'm going to take over. That would be,
Yes,
that would be really silly of me, because there's a built up, like you say, there are layers, and there are people in position and who I would need to learn and understand, and culture that I'd need to learn and understand. And
that part.
I hope that, especially with so many people moving here now because of the cost of living and other challenges they're facing in other communities. I just hope that they understand that it's the same here.
It
You
definitely that. And anywhere you go, you want to be able to acclimate, and acclimate, you have to really, like you said, dig in and find out, oh, they don't like this. Okay, this is where the culture is. Oh, okay, this is where the person that you kind of, the behind the scenes blessings that give you guidance, all those things are necessary. So
know. Mhm. Mhm.
I say all of that. Let's talk about love again.
Okay. All right.
Can you identify a song that you sung as or you heard as a child and it was a love song? And then you became an adult and you saying, wait one
Oh my
minute, I didn't know it said that.
I don't know about a love song. I think any of I think any of Aretha's songs I heard routinely over and over and over and over again, and could probably at that time, I was running around, mouthing the lyrics, not really understanding, whether it was like Natural Woman or, Rock Steady or any of not knowing what she was talking about. I had no idea, but it was just the vibe of the time, so
Mm-hmm.
like how we cleaned our house, to music and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know about an actual love. No, I think that's probably it. I think those probably more maybe I'm thinking about maybe I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Because sometimes, and I'll give you an example. I had a young man on my first season, and he talked about what is it their name? Oh, Oh, I cannot think. Anyway, he talked about the song that he had heard the song repeatedly throughout his life. And one day
Hmm.
he was driving down the street with his aunt, uh, and he heard, I love the way you release me. I love the way. And he said, he was like, wait Isley Brothers, Isley
Oh,
Brothers.
okay.
And he said, wait a minute, I love the
Right.
way you release me. He's like, wait a minute, I've been singing this and I didn't know.
Know what it was.
But
Yeah.
life experience will bring a understanding as
Oh,
well, because you sing it for the vibration, because it's,
exactly.
yeah, and then you go, wait a minute, I know what they're talking about, because guess what? I've been through that.
Right, exactly. 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 And I think there are people I don't know. I think for me a lot of times my relationship to music has really been more, as you say, vibrational, like more, it lifts me up at times that I need, but I'm not, there are people who just sit and listen, and
Hmm.
I've never been that kind of person where they actually really delve into the lyrics and all that. And I've never really been that immersed in music to know, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Is there a particular artist or song that you pull on when you're in a situation? And I say this, we all have our friends, we have
Mhm.
our families, but
Mhm.
say it was a long day at work or you're leaving from the grocery store and something just took you
Mhm.
over and you're like, I got to get it right. I got to get my spirit right. What are you
Mhm.
going to put on? Who is the artist or the song?
I can put on anything Yolanda Adams. I can put on anything Andre Crouch.
Mm,
Yeah, anything. Definitely. Yeah. Usually, let me just say, being the only Black woman in the state system for a long time, the justice system for a long time, there were many days like that. Um, but I'm a talker. I need to bounce things off on people. And I had very few people who really understood what I was talking about because they weren't necessarily in that situation. So the my recourse when that would happen would be that kind of music. Anything
mhm.
really, things spiritual, but more often than not, Yolanda just always spoke to me. You know what I mean? Just really kind of could take my energy back to where it needed to be. Um, and help me and make me remember, because that's kind of what I always needed to get back to, my root. You know what made me remember like what I'm doing there, because you can get caught up in all these other distractions, especially in environments where you don't have a lot of camaraderie around.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy for you to want to become accepted by, the status quo. So um, I always resort to something um, spiritually based to bring me back. I knew that was kind of the only way that I could come back to square one, like what I really needed, and kind of, penetrate so that I could go back in and have a stronger um, exterior when I go back the next day, because I knew I had to, knew I had to go back. So yeah. The other thing I will tell you is sometimes for me, um, I just needed to have a physical moving of situations. Like I would need to take myself out of that physical environment, whether it be walking around downtown or leaving and going to have, lunch somewhere on the west side, or doing, I had these physical things that I would do to kind of transport me um, from those negative experiences, because I needed to do it quickly, because if you don't, it can take hold of your internal, how you function.
Yes.
So yeah, so yeah, that was my experience. Yeah.
I love that you knew how to self soothe and to bring yourself back into alignment. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is necessary when we are customer service and we do work with the public, because it is times when you get triggered and you like, they
Right.
think they
Right.
playing with me like
Right.
I'm
Right.
89106. But
Exactly.
you
Exactly. Yeah.
clearly bring yourself back, and
Yeah.
you had methods. You said you either went to go eat on the west side or you walk, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how you ground yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful because you had 20 years of doing
Mm-hmm.
this and you needed to have something that was your thing.
Mm-hmm.
What they say, it's your thing. Do
Right.
what you want to do. I can't
Yeah.
tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely that. I do have one last question before we get out of here. And I say this all the time. I love high vibrational energy songs where people come together. 9 times out of 10, if you see a whole group collectively singing together, it
Mm-hmm.
gets your attention, whether you're participating in it or you're
Mm-hmm.
watching it. Like, for example, you're in a restaurant, you hear people go, Happy birthday.
Right.
Typically, they don't even know you, but they'll come in, they'll sing happy
Mm-hmm.
birthday, and some of us will start saying, Hey, you family. And it's just such a beautiful energy that you can tap into. I say all of that to say, can you identify a song that had really high energy that you either participated in or you saw a group sing it and participated in, and you like, ooh, it made you stop in your tracks and watch or participated?
You know what? I think all the line dance stuff, the Cupid Shuffle, electric slide, the teach me how to dougie, all that, you know what I mean? I think just the way it, because that is the reaction that most people have no matter what event you're at. When that begins, the assignment is that everybody kind of gets in formation and kind of does this collective movement, which is just so inspiring both to be a part of and to watch. And it is a way um, that we celebrate everything, whether it be a wedding or graduation, um, I mean, all the things. And just, even if you've got kind of a dud party going on, the minute one of those things is played, everybody understands they're to get information and to, work collectively. And it's just really, it's kind of a beautiful testament to us, I believe, because it's something that we don't have to speak about. It just happens organically every time. And I don't care where you are, it's going to happen. Right. It's going to.
Yes.
So I think gives me a lot of joy. A lot.
I
Hmm.
love that. And what a great example because you're absolutely right. I don't care when I'm in DC, I can be in LA, in Detroit, New Orleans.
Right.
Once those songs
Right.
come on, either
Right.
you're watching and you're bopping on the
Right.
side or you're joining in and you're doing the dance. But the energy and the vibration of it is very
Mhm.
high because of those songs
Mhm.
and because it requires collective participation.
Exactly. It does. It does. It's a collective movement, and it's beautiful to see because, and it's not, and it transcends generations. I mean, there's little kids doing it. I mean, every generation can participate and function in it, and it's just, it's beautiful.
I
It really is.
I definitely agree with that. Well, um, before we get out of here, I would
Mhm.
love for you to share with your audience, my audience, excuse me, anything that you have going on in the future. If you're working on any ideas or you have any social media platforms you would like to share with my audience, if they have a question for you, I don't know what, but do you have anything you would like to share with my audience before we get out of here?
No, not really. I just want everybody to go and be great and do great things and, come together as a community. I'm not, I retired and I retired in 2022. It's been almost 2 years, and I have been, for the first time in my life, just kind of living my life like it's golden, doing my own thing, kind of taking my time, to just kind of recollect and reassess what's going to happen in this next phase of my life, and it's been a time for me to kind of let go of a lot of things.
Mm,
um, yeah, over the years, you develop resentments and negative experiences that, sometimes you need to reassess and understand the lesson that was learned in all of that. And I needed some time to just be still,
yes,
and I thank God that I've been having that time, and that's been what I'm doing. I'm listening, for some direction in terms of what this next phase is going to look like. But I'm just very appreciative, love my community, and understand, that we've got work to do.
absolutely.
Definitely have work to do, and I want to be as much of a support system as I can to the young folks that are out there doing that frontline work, because it takes a lot. It takes a village. It takes all of us. So yeah, so no, but other than that, I'm not. I'm just living my life in my lane. What they say, drinking water and minding my business.
Well, I'm a big proponent of minding your business.
Right.
It's times that we should be in the business, but it's a time and place that we need to mind our own business because it's for our better good. So I agree with that.
Mhm.
Before, let me just say this. I am so thankful. I love that you have been so transparent with your journey of life, with being
Mhm.
a judge, your perspective, the things that you've encountered. I so appreciate that. I always say this one particular thing. I talk about the journey and the destination. The
Mhm.
journey is where we learn and where we grow.
Absolutely.
The destination is where we celebrate. We always have to have a time to celebrate because if you don't celebrate, then you get resentful of that journey.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when it's all said and done, we got to get back into that journey so we can
Right.
continue to learn.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I say all of that to say when I have my men on, I salute them. My women, I'm going to bow to you again, my beautiful lady.
Oh, thank you.
You've been just so enlightening. And like I said, whether it's a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, your words are enriched in this program and it can make a difference from somebody that's going through the process to become a judge and to be able to look at it from a different lens.
Right. I would say, you know what, and support the young folks that decide that they want to put their name on the ballot, because it's not easy. You know what I mean? It's really not easy. And we really have to start paying attention to all of um, those efforts, you know, and really getting behind them and supporting them by voting, by telling our friends to vote for them, you know, by valuing their time to, you know, that they've taken to be on the ballot. You know, it's really important, and not tearing each other down. You know, there was an experience that I witnessed where I saw a group of, not necessarily, I don't know, some natives, some non-natives, who spent a whole lot of time tearing down another black candidate. And I'm not saying you have to support everybody just because they're black. You know, everybody,
Absolutely.
you know, representation matters, but so does, you know, what you think they'll accomplish on behalf of the community. But anytime you spend that kind of time tearing down a black another black person, the question then becomes, you know, how do you value, you, and do you value other black people? Because other communities may do that, but they do it very quietly. You're not witness to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I just hope that we just, my prayer is that we value each other and ourselves more than we have been, and that we place a higher premium on keeping our community together and guarding it, you know, safeguarding it, so that we're not victim to, you know, self sabotage. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And before we get out of here, um, I would love for you to dedicate a love song to the world. If you had the opportunity, can you?
Probably "Love's in Need of Love Today," Stevie Wonder. Yeah, yeah, that's the one.
That's
Hmm.
wonderful. I think that song never goes out of style.
Right.
I think
Hmm.
it's very valid for the current
Hmm.
situation that we're in.
Absolutely, because we
So,
are in a situation. Yes.
and
Hmm.
with that being said, you guys, please, please put your hands together and thank my amazing special guest, Miss Karen Bennett-Haron.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I wish you all the best with your endeavors on your new season.
Thank you so much. And as I get out of here, I always say, I see you out here in these Las Vegas streets.
There you go. Okay. See you later.